So these are all the Streaks games I made in processing. So on Snapchat, there's streaks, and I happen to like sending creative ways of displaying good night streaks. So I made 4 different games in processing, partially just to mess around, um, partially to learn new concepts, and this is what I made. This isn't actually the first one I made. This is, I think, the second one I made. So I was trying to learn how to do collisions and shooting, right? So this thing right here is supposed to be the player. It follows the mouse x coordinate and it uses the easing equation to like create smooth movement. Doesn't actually look smooth, but like I tried. And this is a randomly generated 2D array of bricks. Basically, the player would just shoot through these bricks, and the bullet like it travels through a random number. And the point was they'd shoot through all the bricks, and it would reveal a message, and it's good night streaks, and that would be my streak message. Um, This was mainly to teach me, or for me to learn how to do collision, the easing equation, a little bit of animation because I animated that shot right there, and then a few effects like every time the bullet collides with something, as well as displaying text. So that's it. It just says good night streaks. And I know in hindsight, the rate of fire should probably be increased, and it's not particularly satisfying to shoot, but it was my first attempt. Actually, no, the first attempt I made was this. This is the absolute first thing I've ever written in programming. It's complete spaghetti code. There's the like everything's just all over the place. There's like one switch statement that's like the cleanest thing there is, and then an entire method for every screen, and it was bad, but like it was me just learning how to use processing. Yeah, crack the lock it there. You have 3 tries. Click to start. Um, so processing is a visual-oriented programming language, so I thought, okay, might as well make games. So this is a variation on the lock picking minigame from BioShock 2. I thought, hey, it would be cool if you just click in the green spot. They get progressively faster over time. If you click on the white spot, nothing happens, but that favorite number, 456, and then it just says good night streaks. Again, this was the first program I made in processing, and I was more or less just learning syntax and everything, and that was, I'm like, hey, I'll just write a streaks message and send that. The third thing I made was right over here. Um, so this game actually has a time limit. The way it works is there's a dial up in the left corner, and these each 3 dials controls a set of random characters that display on the screen. And what's supposed to happen is as you get closer to the actual message, the dial in there will tick closer to green, and it's going to run out. Game over. So the player would control each of the dials by hovering their mouse over the left or right. Um, that triangle is actually kind of there just for aesthetic purposes. And yeah, the player has to get that dial as far green as possible. So display the right message and, oh no, one more time. I also try to make it really hard. I don't know why, it's pretty dumb. And if you're sensing a pattern with all my games, you don't know the message it spells out. There we go. Timer stops, good night streaks. For every one of these dials, there's 6 possible positions in which the right answer could occur. The way the game works is it takes whatever angle there's a variable for each of these dials, and they each have an angle between 0 and 2 pi. If the dial it goes back like um, a full rotation, then you basically just take the negative angle, convert that to a positive angle, and then if the angle is within like a certain range of the correct answer, then it considers it the right answer. Like basically based on which sixth of this dial it's in, it'll display a different letter or different set of letters. There's game over. I should really extend the time limit. I didn't design these to be particularly like, well, I didn't put too much effort into making them really fun. They're not masterpieces. They're just me messing around. Good night streaks. And yeah, every time, not only are the letters well, all the letters are randomized except for the real answer. Though that space, I should probably add more spaces because it's a dead giveaway as if to it's correct. Anyway, yeah, that figuring out how the angles worked to make like a negative angle correspond to a positive angle that just took forever, and even the dial isn't perfect, but whatever. And then the last Streaks game I made was actually just a clone of Doodle Jump. So in my comp sci class, these guys wanted to hand in Doodle Jump as their CPT, so I challenged myself to make the game in 2 hours. Um, this is Doodle Jump. Doodle Jump's a mobile game, so naturally the aspect ratio is tall, and it's basically just a basic version of Doodle Jump. There's collision between the platforms and the player block. Um, Gravity is calculated as an acceleration value. Every time you jump, that's an acceleration value. There's little particle effects every time the player hits something. I think this is the first time I created that particle effect, and I use it in all my other games just because particle effects can improve any game. And it's just there's a particle object. It generates a random vector, a random magnitude between 1 and 3, and then a random direction vector. And what it does is it creates about 30 particles or so, and if it collides with the floor, it disappears. Well, the platform, it disappears. And then if not, it just fades or travels outward in whatever direction until it fades away. How the level designing algorithm, whatever, works is that it basically just, and there's the streaks message, it basically just generates or picks a random x coordinate, and then it draws a block at that x coordinate, and then it picks a random number, which is less than the player's height, and that creates the interval between each of the platforms. So you'll never see more than one platform at any given y coordinate, and you'll always see a minimum space between any two platforms. Um, the game calculates um, it calculates collision on blocks that aren't actually visible. I know, my mistake, but it basically checks to see if you have a downward velocity, and once you drop below that line, it kills you. So these are all the Streaks games I made. I made a few others, but I'll probably use another video for that. The code, it gets better over time. The first one was just complete spaghetti code. The shooter, it has, well, barely any methods. Collision was just done in a huge if statement. It's not done in a method. And yeah, this was more or less just me learning how to do everything. Doodle Jump I used to learn how to calculate gravity, how to do platforming, how to do particle effects, how to do screen scrolling, and then Shooter was to do collision and shooting, and then the dial streaks I just wanted to mess with angles. Anyway, I'll make another video for the rest of the games I made on processing.